Do you remember the things that were completely normal in the 1980s but are illegal now? The everyday habits we never questioned? These things shaped family routines, school days, and neighborhood life, all without a second thought. Looking back, is it funny or a little shocking how much has changed? In the 1980s, the idea of just a few beers before driving was shrugged off by many as no big deal. Bars often had crowded parking lots late at night, filled with cars whose drivers had been drinking most of the evening. Police might pull someone over if they were swerving badly, but casual drinking and driving was still socially tolerated in ways that feel shocking today. Back then, it was not uncommon for adults to finish up at a local tavern, slide behind the wheel, and head home without a second thought. Even small-town festivals often had beer tents with people drinking freely before hopping into their cars. The danger was always there, but the culture treated it as routine. Friends might joke about someone being fine to drive, even when they clearly were not. The truth is, accidents happened often, but the public's attitude was different. Campaigns against drunk driving were only starting to gain momentum, and the phrase "designated driver" was not yet part of everyday vocabulary. Today, even one drink can put you in legal jeopardy behind the wheel, but in the 1980s, it was still seen as normal. Looking back, it is unsettling to realize how casually people risked lives, chalking it up to part of the night out. Do you remember when "just a few" was the excuse everyone used? Step into a restaurant in the 1980s and it would not take long for smoke to hit your face. Entire families sat at tables eating dinner while the next table over puffed away on cigarettes. Ashtrays sat on every surface, and the air was thick with haze that today would be unthinkable. It was not just restaurants. Parents smoked in cars with the windows rolled up while kids sat in the back seat, coughing quietly. Grocery stores had shoppers strolling down the aisles with a cigarette hanging from their lips as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Children often carried the smell of smoke in their hair and clothes no matter where they went. Health warnings were starting to appear, but they were drowned out by the cultural acceptance of smoking everywhere. Non-smokers had little choice but to breathe it in, whether they liked it or not. Smoking sections in restaurants existed, but they were often nothing more than a line of booths separating smokers from non-smokers, with smoke floating freely between them. Looking back, it is astonishing to think that families once tolerated meals eaten in a cloud of secondhand smoke. What was considered everyday life then is illegal in most places now. Do you remember when restaurants handed you an ashtray before they handed you a menu? In the 1980s, you did not need to be 18 to buy cigarettes. You just needed spare change. Vending machines stood inside bowling alleys, diners, and even some grocery stores, stocked with packs of Marlboro or Camel. No ID, no questions. Just put in your quarters, pull the lever, and out came a fresh pack. Teenagers often took advantage, slipping away from parents to try their luck. Some machines even had images of cartoon camels or cowboys printed on the front, giving them a strange sense of legitimacy. It was as easy as buying a candy bar and nobody thought twice about it. Of course, the tobacco companies knew exactly what they were doing. These machines were placed in places kids frequented, ensuring that the habit started early. Even adults who did not smoke saw nothing unusual about the glowing cigarette machine sitting against the wall, humming quietly in a family establishment. By the 1990s, these machines were being phased out under new regulations. But for a generation of kids, they were the easiest way to sneak a smoke. Looking back, it is hard to believe that buying something addictive and dangerous was once as casual as playing a pinball machine. Do you remember the clank of the lever and the thrill of pulling a fresh pack into your hands? July in the 1980s meant fireworks, and kids had no trouble buying them. Roadside stands sold Roman candles, bottle rockets, and sometimes even M80s to children with just a few dollars in their pocket. The thrill of walking up to a wooden shack filled with explosives was part of the holiday. Parents often turned a blind eye. Some even sent their kids to buy the fireworks while they got the grill ready. No ID, no rules, just the cash exchange and a paper bag full of sparks and danger. It was almost a childhood tradition to light fireworks with little or no adult supervision. Of course, accidents were common. Burns, lost fingers, and neighborhood fires were part of the risk, but the culture shrugged it off as kids being kids. By today's standards, the idea of handing powerful fireworks to unsupervised children feels reckless, but in the 1980s, it was normal. Looking back, it is both nostalgic and unsettling to remember how casually fireworks were sold to kids. The freedom felt exhilarating, but the danger was always one wrong move away. Do you remember clutching a bag of bottle rockets like it was treasure? In the 1980s, riding in the back of a pickup truck was not just transportation, it was an adventure. Kids piled in after Little League games, sitting on the tailgate or bouncing around in the open bed as the truck rumbled down the road. The wind whipped through their hair and it felt like freedom itself. Parents allowed it without hesitation, often waving as the truck drove off with kids standing upright in the back. Weekend parades, church picnics, and neighborhood gatherings all featured lines of trucks filled with children laughing and waving. Safety was barely an afterthought. Of course, the risks were immense. One sharp turn or sudden stop could throw passengers onto the pavement. But in the 1980s, the focus was on fun and togetherness, not potential accidents. It was simply how kids got around, especially in rural communities. Today, laws forbid it in most places, but the memory of riding in the back of a truck under a summer sky is hard to forget. Do you remember gripping the side of a pickup bed, laughing as the world sped by? Station wagons in the 1980s were rolling playgrounds for kids. With no seatbelt enforcement and wide, flat cargo spaces, children sprawled across the back on long road trips. Some built forts with pillows and blankets, while others simply slid around as the car took turns. Parents rarely insisted on seatbelts, often ignoring them altogether. Kids jumped from seat to seat, played games, or napped, stretched out across the back seat. For families, road trips were noisy, chaotic, and strangely joyful, even though they would be considered unsafe today. The lack of restraint came with consequences, but most families considered it normal. Seatbelt laws were only just beginning to be enforced, and public attitudes had not yet caught up. To many, buckling up felt unnecessary, something only overly cautious people worried about. Looking back, it is astonishing that entire families barreled down highways with children rolling around the car. Do you remember lying flat in the back of a station wagon, staring up at the stars through the rear window? In the 1980s, parents often left kids home alone for entire evenings, or even overnight. A 12-year-old babysitter was considered responsible enough to watch younger siblings while adults went out. Sometimes, kids as young as 10 were left to handle the house until morning. Parents trusted their children in ways that feel shocking today. Instructions were simple. Lock the doors, do not answer the phone, and call a neighbor if anything happened. Pizza delivery filled the gaps, and television kept kids entertained late into the night. Of course, the risks were real. Fires, accidents, or emergencies could leave kids in difficult situations. But the culture valued independence, and leaving children home alone was seen as part of growing up. Kids bragged about being trusted to hold down the fort, wearing it as a badge of maturity. Today, leaving a child alone overnight could result in legal trouble. But in the 1980s, it was routine. Do you remember the thrill of being the responsible one in charge of the house, even if you were just 12? Family barbecues in the 1980s often had a familiar sight: parents handing a child a sip of beer. It was framed as harmless, a way to teach responsibility or demystify alcohol. Kids took small gulps from red plastic cups and laughed at the bitter taste. Adults believed it kept children from sneaking alcohol later, treating it as a rite of passage. Uncles joked, grandparents encouraged, and parents smiled proudly at their child learning to be grown up. It was normalized in backyards across the country. Of course, what seemed harmless then would raise eyebrows today. Laws against underage drinking are strict, and even giving a sip could bring consequences. But in the 1980s, it was part of family gatherings, woven into the rhythm of summer afternoons and smoky grills. Looking back, it is startling how common it was. Do you remember the face you made after your first sip of warm beer at a family cookout? In the 1980s, airplanes had smoking sections. passengers could light up mid-flight, filling a pressurized cabin with smoke while hundreds of strangers sat inches away. Ashtrays were built into every seat, and the smell lingered long after a flight landed. Families flew cross-country while sitting in rows divided only by a flimsy sign that said, "Smoking" and "Non-smoking." In reality, the smoke drifted everywhere, making the entire cabin smell like an ashtray. Flight attendants walked the aisles, serving coffee in one hand and collecting cigarette butts in the other. Health concerns were raised, but airlines continued to allow it, catering to the smoking culture of the time. Children coughed quietly. Non-smokers complained, but the majority accepted it as unavoidable. It was simply part of flying in the 1980s. Today, the thought of someone lighting a cigarette on a plane is absurd and illegal. Do you remember looking up through a haze of smoke while cruising at 30,000 feet? In the 1980s, sticking out your thumb on the side of the road was considered practical, not reckless. Hitchhiking was part of everyday life, especially for teens trying to get to the mall, workers without cars, or college students heading home for the weekend. Parents often reminded their kids to be careful, but they rarely forbade it. Back then, the culture trusted strangers more. A kid could hop into a passing car and be dropped off at school or a friend's house without much worry. Stories about hitchhiking dangers existed, but they felt distant, more like urban legends than reality. Most people saw it as a cheap, convenient way to get around. Drivers often viewed it as neighborly duty. Picking up a hitchhiker was framed as helping someone out, not risking your life. Teenagers even bragged about their hitchhiking adventures, treating it as a milestone of independence. Today, the idea of letting a child climb into a stranger's car is unthinkable. Laws, awareness campaigns, and tragic headlines ended the practice, replacing it with strict warnings. Looking back, it is chilling how normal it once was. Do you remember when a thumb outstretched on the roadside was all the transportation you needed? Halloween nights in the 1980s stretched on for hours. Kids wandered neighborhoods long after the streetlights flickered on, sometimes staying out until midnight. Parents rarely tagged along. Halloween was for children, and adults stayed home to hand out candy. Groups of kids walked miles away from home, crossing busy streets, climbing porch steps, and filling pillowcases with candy until they were too heavy to carry. Older kids pranked each other with shaving cream, toilet paper, and eggs, while younger ones ran from house to house without supervision. The darkness only added to the thrill. Strangers' houses were fair game. No one questioned whether the candy was safe, and no one checked in every hour by phone. Parents trusted kids to return when they were done, even if that meant after midnight. Today, trick-or-treating hours are often capped early in the evening, with parents following close behind and flashlights lighting the path. Looking back, the freedom was exhilarating, but the risks are hard to ignore. Do you remember dragging home a pillowcase so stuffed with candy it nearly ripped? In the 1980s, the sight of first graders walking to school alone was unremarkable. Entire groups of children, barely 6 or 7 years old, marched down sidewalks with backpacks bouncing, chatting, and laughing without a single adult in sight. It was a matter of practicality. Parents worked early shifts, buses did not always cover every street, and walking was the simplest solution. Crossing busy roads with no crossing guard was considered part of growing up. Children learned independence with every step, even when it meant braving rain or snow. Strangers waved as kids passed, shop owners looked out from storefronts, and neighbors trusted the community to keep watch. Parents did not worry about constant supervision the way they do today. By the time children reached 4th grade, walking alone was practically expected. Now, letting a 6-year-old walk a few blocks alone can lead to intervention from authorities. Looking back, it is amazing how normal it once was to see children managing themselves in the big world. Do you remember the pride of making it to school on your own 2 feet? Playgrounds in the 1980s were built less for safety and more for durability. Swings, monkey bars, seesaws, and towering metal slides stood proudly on surfaces paved with asphalt or concrete. If a child fell, and they often did, the impact was hard and unforgiving. Metal slides scorched bare legs in the summer sun, and merry-go-rounds spun so fast they sent kids flying. Monkey bars stretched high, daring children to climb higher than they should. Cuts, bruises, and even broken bones were part of the package, and kids wore them like badges of honor. Parents rarely intervened. A scraped knee was rinsed with a hose, and kids went right back to climbing. Teachers supervising recess barely blinked at children tumbling onto blacktop. Today, playgrounds are built with padded surfaces, rubber mulch, and strict regulations. Looking back, it is astonishing to think how casually kids once played inches above concrete. Do you remember hitting the asphalt, shaking it off, and running back to the swings without a second thought? In the 1980s, riding a bike was freedom, and safety gear was almost non-existent. Kids flew down steep hills, popped wheelies, and raced through traffic with no helmets, lights, or reflectors. A scraped elbow was a badge of honor, and a headlong crash was just part of the day. Parents watched from porches but rarely insisted on helmets. Helmets were for motocross racers or kids with overprotective parents, not for everyday riders. Night rides were common too, with only the moonlight to guide the way. Many kids modified their bikes with baseball cards clipped to the wheels, making them sound like roaring engines. Others stripped off their brakes to make the bikes lighter, even if it meant stopping with their feet. Summer evenings often turned into impromptu races, with whole blocks of kids daring each other to go faster. Parents might glance out the window, but rarely stepped in to stop the chaos. For kids, the bike was more than transportation. It was a badge of independence. Children rode in packs, weaving through intersections, cutting across fields, and daring each other to go faster. Crashes sent kids flying over handlebars, but they picked themselves up, brushed off gravel, and kept going. Now, helmets and safety gear are mandatory in most places, and parents enforce them strictly. Looking back, it is striking how much danger was ignored in the name of fun. Do you remember the wind in your face as you bombed a hill with nothing but hope keeping you safe? Public pools in the 1980s often operated under a simple rule: swim at your own risk. Children dove, raced, and roughhoused in the water without a lifeguard in sight. Signs warned swimmers, but no one seemed to care. Parents dropped their kids off at the pool for the afternoon, trusting them to manage on their own. Cannonballs splashed into the deep end, games of chicken toppled kids into the water, and accidents were common. Yet, it was all considered part of summer. The smell of chlorine clung to everything, from swimsuits to towels, while kids played for hours under the hot sun. Older kids sometimes acted as unofficial lifeguards, shouting advice but joining the roughhousing themselves. Pool toys, rings, rafts, and plastic noodles added more chaos as fights and games blurred together. Snack bars sold sodas and candy, fueling even wilder play. Parents often returned hours later to find their children exhausted but still unwilling to leave. When accidents did happen, older kids or nearby adults jumped in to help. Communities trusted themselves rather than trained staff to watch over swimmers. For children, the absence of authority felt like freedom. Today, liability laws make unsupervised pools almost unheard of. Looking back, it is startling how casually kids once swam in water that could be deadly. Do you remember plunging into a pool knowing no lifeguard was watching? In the 1980s, school chemistry labs were stocked with chemicals and equipment that would never be allowed today. Open flames, toxic powders, and glass containers sat on counters, often handled by unsupervised teenagers. Experiments included real acids, volatile reactions, and the occasional intentional explosion when students pushed the limits. Teachers encouraged curiosity but sometimes left the room, trusting students not to get carried away. Predictably, they did. Kids melted rulers with Bunsen burners, set paper towels alight just to see what would happen, and mixed random powders in search of a reaction. Some smuggled small jars of chemicals home, convinced they could continue experiments in their garages. The smell of sulfur or ammonia often lingered long after class ended. Safety drills were rare, and fire alarms sometimes went off because of student pranks. Despite the chaos, many kids considered chemistry class the most exciting part of school. Chemical burns, smoke, and even small fires were not unusual. Safety goggles were optional, and protective gear was minimal. Science felt exciting precisely because it was risky. Today, schools use watered-down kits with strict oversight, a far cry from the chemistry chaos of the past. Looking back, it is remarkable how much danger was tolerated in the name of education. Do you remember striking a match in class and wondering if the whole lab would go up in smoke? In the 1980s, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches were everywhere in school cafeterias. They were cheap, easy, and filling, making them a staple lunch option for millions of kids. Allergy warnings were virtually non-existent. Peanut butter was served daily, spread across sandwiches, crackers, and even desserts. Kids traded peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, swapped halves, and dug into jars during class parties. The smell of peanut butter filled cafeterias, mixed with the sugary scent of grape jelly. Peanut butter cookies often appeared at bake sales, and no one thought to warn kids about potential risks. Teachers sometimes used peanut butter sandwiches as emergency lunches for students who forgot theirs. Peanut butter crackers were stacked in vending machines, and peanut butter cups found their way into nearly every Halloween haul. For children without allergies, it was comfort food that never seemed to get old. The assumption was simple. Everyone loved peanut butter. Teachers and parents encouraged it as a source of protein, never considering that for some children it could be deadly. Severe allergies were rarely recognized, let alone accommodated. Today, schools ban peanuts entirely, with strict guidelines to protect students. Looking back, it is almost frightening how casually peanut butter was treated. Do you remember opening your lunchbox and finding yet another peanut butter sandwich waiting inside? In the 1980s, soda machines were as common in school hallways as lockers. Kids had easy access to Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or Mountain Dew between classes, dropping coins into glowing machines that promised a sugary pick-me-up. Teachers and principals turned a blind eye, sometimes even buying their own cans during the day. It was not just about refreshment, it was part of the culture. Students lined up at lunch to grab an ice-cold can, sipping caffeine before math class, or slamming down sugar before gym. Nobody considered the long-term health effects of guzzling soda at school. In fact, schools often profited from the machines, taking a cut of every sale to fund activities. Children as young as 7 walked away with sodas bigger than their hands, sipping them casually in the cafeteria. The sight of a classroom buzzing with kids fueled by caffeine and sugar was routine. Parents rarely complained because soda was simply a part of daily life. Today, soda machines have been banned from most schools, replaced with water or juice options. Looking back, it is wild to think of kids chugging Mountain Dew at 10 a.m. before spelling tests. Do you remember the thrill of hearing the clunk of a can dropping into the slot, knowing that bubbly sugar was all yours? In the 1980s, setting up a lemonade stand or bake table required nothing more than a folding card table and a few Dixie cups. Children filled pitchers with sugar-heavy lemonade, sliced brownies onto paper plates, and sold them to neighbors without a second thought. No permits, no health codes, no regulations, just community spirit. It was a rite of passage for kids. Selling lemonade on the corner or homemade cookies in front of a school gave children their first taste of entrepreneurship. Parents encouraged it, handing kids a few dollars for ingredients and sending them outside to earn a little money. Strangers stopped without hesitation, dropping coins into jars and chatting with the young sellers. The ingredients were never inspected, and sanitation was not even considered. A dirty pitcher or sticky countertop did not scare anyone. It was understood that kids were just having fun, and neighbors trusted them. Today, laws in many areas make it illegal to sell food or drink without permits, even for kids. What was once an innocent neighborhood tradition is now restricted. Looking back, it feels strange that something so wholesome could now be considered a violation. Do you remember the pride of counting your change after a day at your lemonade stand? School bake sales in the 1980s were a free-for-all of homemade treats. Parents and children brought in cookies, brownies, fudge, and cupcakes, piled onto paper plates and wrapped in plastic wrap. Nobody labeled ingredients, and nobody asked about allergies. Kids bought desserts with their lunch money, trading gooey brownies for cupcakes or hoarding a dozen cookies for the bus ride home. Teachers encouraged students to buy as much as possible, since the money often went to fund field trips or sports teams. It was a sugar-fueled event everyone looked forward to. The mystery was part of the charm. Nobody cared if the chocolate chips were off-brand or if the cupcakes were frosted with margarine instead of butter. And food allergies? They were rarely acknowledged. Peanut butter squares and nut-filled brownies sat right next to everything else, with no warnings. Today, strict labeling laws and allergy awareness have all but ended that kind of bake sale. What was once a joyful community event now requires lists of ingredients, store-bought packaging, and safety inspections in many places. Looking back, it is almost unthinkable how casually we ate food made by strangers without asking questions. Do you remember biting into a brownie at a school sale, not knowing what was inside, and not caring? Toy stores in the 1980s were packed with tiny parts and choking hazards that today would never make it past regulators. Marbles, jacks, miniature cars, and even toys with removable magnets were sold freely, often targeted directly at children under 5. No warning labels, no age restrictions, just bright packaging and a buyer beware attitude. Parents knew the risks, but bought them anyway. It was common for toddlers to play with toys that contained dozens of tiny pieces, scattering them across living room floors. If a child accidentally swallowed one, it was treated as a household accident, not the manufacturer's fault. Toy safety standards existed but were far looser than they are today. Small action figures, puzzle pieces, and building sets often included parts that posed obvious risks. Yet, toy aisles overflowed with them, and parents rarely thought twice. Now, strict labeling and age restrictions dominate the toy market, with regulators cracking down on anything deemed dangerous. Looking back, it is sobering to realize how freely dangerous items were marketed to the youngest kids. Do you remember opening a toy filled with tiny parts and immediately losing half of them under the couch? Walk into a candy shop or grocery store in the 1980s, and you might stumble across liquor-filled chocolates. Wrapped like ordinary candy, these small sweets contained a shot of rum, brandy, or liqueur inside. They were sold openly, with no restrictions on who could buy them. Kids often ended up with them, either as gifts from relatives or as part of holiday candy boxes. Parents laughed when children's faces twisted at the bitter taste, chalking it up to part of growing up. The idea that alcohol-filled candy could be freely sold to minors was not considered outrageous. These treats were often displayed next to regular chocolates, making it easy for anyone to pick them up. While they were rarely strong enough to intoxicate, the principle of children eating candy with liquor inside was striking. Yet at the time, nobody thought it was unusual. Today, alcohol-infused chocolates are sold with restrictions and often marketed only to adults. Looking back, it feels bizarre that liquor-laced candy was once treated as just another sweet. Do you remember biting into what looked like chocolate, only to be hit with the sharp taste of rum? Hair dryers in the 1960s looked like they came straight from a beauty salon, but without any of the safety checks. These early models had bulky hoods or handheld nozzles, often with thick cords that frayed faster than a worn shoelace. You'd plug them into the wall, perch near the bathroom sink, and hope for the best. No ground wires, no insulation. Just you, your wet hair, and a live current a sneeze away from disaster. The metal casing got hot. The motors sparked occasionally. And heaven help you if your fingers were damp. Water plus faulty wiring? That hairdo could turn into a fireworks show. Yet people trusted them because that sleek salon look felt worth the risk. Back then, it was just another day in the name of glamour. But if electricity was playing with fire, what we put directly on wounds wasn't much better, especially when it came in a bright red bottle with a mercury surprise. Home hair dryers in the 1960s looked like they came straight from a beauty salon, but without any of the safety checks. These early models had bulky hoods or handheld nozzles, often with thick cords that frayed faster than a worn shoelace. You'd plug them into the wall, perch near the bathroom sink, and hope for the best. No ground wires, no insulation. Just you, your wet hair, and a live current a sneeze away from disaster. The metal casing got hot. The motors sparked occasionally. And heaven help you if your fingers were damp. Water plus faulty wiring? That hairdo could turn into a fireworks show. Yet people trusted them because that sleek salon look felt worth the risk. Back then, it was just another day in the name of glamour. But if electricity was playing with fire, what we put directly on wounds wasn't much better, especially when it came in a bright red bottle with a mercury surprise. The floppy disk, a cornerstone of early personal computing, emerged in the late 1960s, symbolizing the first foray into portable digital storage. When the 3.5-inch floppy was introduced, many pondered, who would ever need that much storage? A notion that now elicits a chuckle in our gigabyte-saturated age. The act of inserting a floppy disk, accompanied by its characteristic click, defined an era of computing in the 80s and 90s. Despite its obsolescence due to advancing storage technologies, the floppy disk endures in the digital lexicon, immortalized as the universal save file icon. This subtle homage serves as a nostalgic reminder of the disk's pivotal role in the evolution of data storage and management. Open container drinking at picnics and beaches was once as American as apple pie. You packed a cooler, grabbed some lawn chairs, and brought along a six-pack. No one questioned it. You drank beer under the sun, wine at the lake, maybe something stronger at a weekend concert in the park. Families mixed with college students, teenagers with grandparents. You might remember the clink of bottles, the pop of a tab, the slight buzz that came with a good view and a salty breeze. There were no plastic cups or disguised flasks, just open drinks in open air. Law enforcement mostly looked the other way unless things got rowdy. Public drinking was part of leisure. But as drunk driving concerns grew and city ordinances tightened, open container laws spread across the country. Today, drinking in public can result in fines or arrest. Beaches have patrols. Parks have signs. The once casual ritual is now a controlled offense. But in the 1980s, no one hid their bottle in a paper bag. It was open, visible, and normal. And if that sounds shocking today, wait until you remember the candies they gave kids, designed to look exactly like cigarettes. Clackers were two acrylic or glass balls tied to a string and handed to children with no safety warnings and a full green light. You'd hold the middle of the string, swing the balls upward and downward until they collided above and below your hand, producing that iconic clack-clack sound. It looked simple. It sounded addictive. It was also a hazard waiting to happen. The plastic versions could chip. The glass ones could shatter. And if you missed your rhythm, one ball went rogue, swinging at eyebrow height with all the grace of a wrecking ball. Kids practiced for hours, trying to get the timing right, turning every playground into a percussion concert of risk. Parents shrugged. Teachers banned them. Hospitals stocked up on ice packs and gauze. But still, they were cool. Until one clack too many ended in sharp pieces flying through the air. Eventually, safety commissions pulled them off shelves. But back then, one broken pair just meant you were in the market for another. And if that seemed dangerous, wait till you hear about people putting flammable foam containers directly onto gas stoves like it was just another Tuesday. Let us talk about the rumpus room. If the living room was where adults behaved themselves, the rumpus room was where the kids got wild. Usually tucked away in the basement, this was the unofficial playground of every suburban household from the 1950s to the 1970s. Carpeted in wall-to-wall shag, lit by lava lamps, and often filled with beanbag chairs, dartboards, and mismatched furniture, the rumpus room was every child's dream and every parent's secret weapon. You could send the kids down there for hours, let them roughhouse, make noise, and burn off all that energy while the grown-ups enjoyed some blessed peace upstairs. It was not about looking nice, it was about cutting loose. Some had jukeboxes, others had board games stacked to the ceiling. And every now and then, you would find a couch that doubled as a trampoline. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Over time, the idea faded as homes got bigger and open concepts took over. Now, everything is multifunctional. But there was something beautiful about a room that existed just for noise, mess, and memory making. The name says it all, Rumpus. No rules, just vibes. But even in the loudest house, you still needed a way to call the kids upstairs. And you will not believe how we used to do that. Leaving kids in the car while you shopped was not only common, it was considered efficient parenting. You would crack the window a little, toss a snack in the back seat, and tell them not to touch the gear shift. That was it. No seat warmers, no climate control, just the burning hot vinyl seats and a juice box to keep them busy. You would run into the grocery store, the post office, maybe even the mall, and come back 20 minutes later like it was nothing. Sometimes the kid was asleep, sometimes reading, sometimes playing with the door locks like it was a game. There were no viral videos or angry phone calls to the authorities. People assumed kids were tougher back then, or maybe they just really trusted that nothing would go wrong. Sure, you would get the occasional warning to not talk to strangers through the car window, but that was the extent of it. It was all part of the era's free-range approach to parenting. And while the kids were stuck in the car, the adults, they were likely sneaking a break of their own, somewhere smoky and very much on school property. Yep, you heard that right. In the 1970s, you could go to the store and buy a science kit that came with actual radioactive samples. Glowing rocks, uranium ore, the whole radioactive shebang. These kits were sold as educational tools, a way to spark curiosity in young minds. And they did, right before they sparked some very serious health concerns. Back then, no one batted an eye. Parents figured if it came in a box with a smiling cartoon scientist on the front, it had to be safe. Kids were in their rooms waving Geiger counters around like they were playing laser tag, all while absorbing trace amounts of nuclear material. It was science. It was cool. It was totally wild. Of course, by the time the risks caught up to the curiosity, these kits had already found their way into thousands of households. That glow-in-the-dark magic? Yeah, turns out it was not so magical after all. But if you thought glowing uranium in your closet was risky, wait until you hear what people kept in their trucks, in full view, completely unlocked, and nobody cared. Sunbathing with baby oil and reflectors was the ultimate summer ritual. You lay out in the backyard, on the roof, or at the beach, armed with nothing but a bottle of Johnson's baby oil and a silver reflector under your chin. The goal? Tan fast, tan deep, and tan dark. The shine from the oil made your skin sizzle, and the reflector bounced rays straight into your face like a heat lamp. Everyone did it. Magazines encouraged it. Tan lines were a badge of honor, peeling skin a minor inconvenience. Sunscreen, if it was used at all, was barely SPF 4. People believed a good tan was healthy. Doctors warned of sunburn, but nobody listened. Today, dermatologists beg patients to stop tanning, and laws limit tanning bed access for minors. The link between ultraviolet exposure and skin cancer is undeniable. But back then, summer meant bronze skin and beach bodies, no matter the cost. Sunburns turned into tans, blisters were shrugged off, and if the oil left you red and raw, you did it again the next day. The danger came slowly. Just like another invisible risk, many families kept right next to the medicine cabinet, in a tiny glass stick filled with mercury. Mercurochrome was the go-to cure-all for scraped knees, elbow bumps, and mystery cuts. Parents swore by it. Kids feared it. That bright reddish-orange liquid came in a glass bottle with a base. But here's the kicker. It contained mercury. Yes, mercury, the same heavy metal now known for its toxic effects. Back then, no one seemed too worried. You'd cry over the sting, get that radioactive-looking splotch on your skin, and be sent back outside with a pat on the head. It looked serious. It felt serious. It was practically a badge of honor. But despite the visual drama, the medical risk was invisible and long-lasting. Mercurochrome was banned in several countries over mercury concerns, yet the smell alone could transport you back to childhood panic and Band-Aid negotiations. But if your parents weren't coating your wounds with mercury, they might have been setting you up with something even more explosive, like a fun chemistry set packed with open flames and no supervision. Speaking of things built right into the house, you are not going to believe what kind of doors were hiding inside the walls. For your milk. Picture this. You wake up, walk to the side of your kitchen, and open a tiny little door built right into your house. Behind it, a bottle of fresh milk, cool and ready to pour, maybe even some butter or cream depending on the day. No, it is not magic. That was the milk door, also called a milk chute. These small pass-through compartments were genius in their simplicity. One side opened from the outside, where the milkman would quietly place the day's delivery. The other opened from inside the house, so you never had to go out in your slippers or bathrobe. It was the drive-through window before there were drive-throughs. These doors were more than convenient. They were a sign that the world once ran on a shared rhythm. Everyone knew when the milkman came by. You could even leave payments or notes inside. Some had little shelves, others had insulation. And most people never locked them, because who would steal milk? Of course, once grocery stores and home refrigeration became widespread, the milk door quietly disappeared, sealed up, painted over, or just forgotten. But somewhere out there, behind layers of drywall, a few still exist. Hidden time capsules. Max Headroom was supposed to be the future, a computer-generated, sarcastic television host who stuttered stylishly and wore sunglasses at night. He was the face of a dystopian digital world, equal parts cyberpunk icon and artificial intelligence with an attitude. Advertisers loved him, especially soda companies, so someone had the bright idea. Let us give him a full television series. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. The Max Headroom show was visually interesting but narratively confusing. It tried to blend science fiction with satire, wrapped in glitchy editing and background noise. Most of the time, you were not sure if the show was broken or just being artsy. The plotline featured underground hackers, corrupt corporations, and a bleak media landscape, which ironically kind of predicted the internet. And Max, once a futuristic face of advertising, became more of a trivia answer at bar night. Still, his influence stuck around in weird ways. You can spot traces of Max Headroom in everything from video game villains to pop music videos. And if you thought that was sensory overload, wait until we talk about the time theaters tried to make movies smell like real life. Aquanet's scented hairspray line hit the shelves in 1968, hoping to combine the hold of a hair helmet with the charm of a perfume ad. The brand was already a household name. By then, Aquanet had glued more bouffants in place than any other product on the market. But someone in marketing must have thought, you know what this cloud of chemicals needs? Flowers. So they rolled out a special line of floral-scented versions. There were rose, jasmine, even a spring breeze blend. The idea was to give users a refreshing, elegant aroma while locking their hairstyle in place for hours. But it backfired, fast. The floral notes clashed with every other scent in a person's routine. The smells mixed into something that made elevators unbearable. To make matters worse, the scent faded quickly, leaving behind the signature Aquanet chemical musk, just with a weird dying flower twist. Even die-hard Aquanet fans could not justify it. By the early 1970s, the line quietly disappeared from shelves. Aquanet stuck around, but its foray into fragrance was a short and smelly detour. But if you want a true example of how the 1960s misunderstood its audience, just look at the British bike that tried to win over American teens by shrinking everything they loved. Driving after a few beers was seen as a minor risk, not a moral failing. In the 1980s, drinking and driving was common, so common it barely raised an eyebrow. Someone would leave a barbecue or a bowling alley, buzzed but smiling, and climb behind the wheel like it was just another Tuesday night. Sometimes they even brought a drink with them for the road, nestled between their legs or sitting in the cup holder before cup holders even existed. You might remember the clink of bottles under the seat or the faint scent of beer still on your uncle's breath as he drove you home. Nobody called it reckless, nobody flinched. It was treated the same way as driving tired or driving in the rain. Risky, sure, but manageable if you knew what you were doing. Breathalyzers were rare. Police might give a warning, not a ticket. Getting pulled over meant a brief conversation, not a night in jail. Today, of course, the laws have changed, and for good reason. Drunk driving kills thousands. Campaigns like Mothers Against Drunk Driving helped turn the tide, showing the public what casual drinking behind the wheel really cost. But back then, it was not about recklessness. It was about a culture that had not yet connected its habits with their consequences. And if the idea of casual drinking while driving sounds dangerous now, just imagine what the air was like inside your favorite restaurant, sandwiched in that glamorized smoking without a hint of warning. And just when you thought that was the low point, someone thought it would be funny to actually sell a toy that involved broken glass in a bag. Yes, seriously. The bag of glass toy kit was one of those ideas that sounds like a joke, because it kind of was, but somehow ended up on actual store shelves. Inspired by a sketch from a comedy show, it became a bizarre reality thanks to novelty companies that took the joke way too far. Inside the package? A small clear bag filled with sharp-edged plastic shards that looked, and in some cases felt, a whole lot like real broken glass. Some versions were labeled as safe plastic, but others? Not so much. The idea was that kids could pretend to play with shattered glass as a prank or just for laughs. But what could possibly go wrong, right? Tiny cuts, choking hazards, or just the sheer confusion of teaching kids that handling jagged shards was entertainment. Parents were either horrified or totally unfazed, depending on their sense of humor. The product didn't last long, and while this prank kit was short-lived, plenty of long-term household items were just as risky, like hair dryers with zero insulation and a plug that sparked like a lightning bolt near the sink. Back in the days when phones had cords and privacy was a privilege, every hallway had a throne, and it was called the gossip bench. This was not just a chair. It was a hybrid masterpiece, a small wooden seat attached to a side table, designed specifically for long, dramatic phone calls. These benches were often placed right by the hallway phone nook, and if you were a teenager in the 1960s or 1970s, this was your favorite spot in the house. You would sit there for hours, twirling the phone cord, whispering about crushes, repeating, "No, you hang up," while your siblings paced in the background waiting for their turn. Some benches had a little drawer for pens and paper. Others had cushions and floral fabric, showing just how serious folks were about comfort during those marathon chats. It was furniture that served one purpose: conversation. But as phones got smaller, and then wireless, and then fit in your pocket, the gossip bench faded away. Today, they are vintage novelties. Back then, they were the nerve center of the household. And while you chatted away about school dances or new neighbors, something else might have been happening overhead. Quietly, from the ceiling, playing your favorite song. Imagine this. It is Sunday morning. You are eating breakfast, and faintly from above your head comes the sweet hum of big band music or the evening news. It looked like something straight out of a haunted dollhouse and somehow got greenlit as a beauty product. The Rejuvenique face mask promised younger, firmer skin through electrical muscle stimulation, which is a fancy way of saying it zapped your face with little shocks. Advertised by a former soap opera star, the mask wrapped around your head like a plastic exoskeleton and turned your facial routine into something that felt like a scene from a horror film. The idea was that the stimulation would tone your face like a gym tones your body, but customers mostly reported mild burns, numbness, and the distinct feeling that they had made a terrible mistake. Despite airing on television with the enthusiasm of a late-night miracle cure, it flopped hard. It was the kind of product that felt less like a beauty tool and more like a sci-fi movie prop that somehow escaped the set. Still, you had to admire the ambition. If you could survive the Rejuvenique, surely you could survive anything the 1980s had to throw at you. And as it turns out, that next throw was straight at the kids, because someone thought gym fashion should start in elementary school. Spray-on snow was a holiday must-have in the 1960s, a seasonal delight that turned every window into a frosted wonderland. Just shake the can, press the nozzle, and watch as fluffy white patterns appeared across the glass. It was festive, easy to use, and absolutely everywhere. The catch? That soft, pretty snow was often laced with lead-based pigment. Yep, Neurotoxins right in the living room. Kids would draw smiley faces and snowflakes, breathing in fumes and getting it on their fingers before heading back to sip cocoa. Parents sprayed entire windows from top to bottom, unaware that every jolly doodle came with a microscopic health warning. When the holidays were over, wiping it off meant smearing fine white dust all over the furniture, and sometimes even using dry cloths that kicked it up into the air again. It stuck to glass, to hands, and to memories. Photos from the era show smiling kids standing in front of the stuff, glowing with seasonal pride and unknowingly inhaling trace amounts of heavy metals. Eventually, safer versions appeared on the market. But for a while, decorating windows was more toxic than tinsel. And if the snow spray didn't get you, the bed you fell asleep on might, because some kids literally snoozed on pillows filled with flammable fluff. The VCR, a marvel that arrived in the 1970s, was akin to a magician in a box, granting us the power to capture time itself. Suddenly, TV schedules no longer dictated our lives. We could record, rewind, and relive our favorite moments at will. The VCR was the herald of home cinema, a concept so revolutionary that even its hefty price tag couldn't dampen its allure. It's a testament to its impact that phrases like "be kind, rewind" are etched in the collective memory of a generation. As DVDs and streaming services emerged, the VCR's star faded, but its legacy of shaping family movie nights and introducing the world to video rentals lives on. Parents spanking kids in public did not invite whispers or legal warnings. It earned nods of approval. In the 1980s, discipline happened wherever it was needed. At the grocery store, in parking lots, outside churches, in schoolyards. If a child misbehaved, parents corrected them on the spot. A quick swat to the backside or a firm grip on the arm was considered loving firmness, not abuse. Older folks would even say, "That child will thank you one day." The phrase, "spare the rod, spoil the child," was not just quoted, it was lived. Nobody called the authorities. Teachers spanked students too. It was woven into the culture of consequences and correction. Today, that same act is considered public violence by many. It can lead to police reports, social worker visits, or even legal charges. And yet, for many who grew up back then, it was the way boundaries were taught. A smack on the bottom followed by a stern look was how parents said, "I love you enough to correct you." Right or wrong, it was real. But for a generation that was spanked in the cereal aisle, there was another truth. Most of them never buckled up in the car ride home. Chemistry sets in the 1960s were less about learning formulas and more about dodging danger with every experiment. These kits came with powders, acids, glass tubes, and, wait for it, alcohol burners. Real ones. You'd light a flame with a match, pour flammable liquids into little dishes, and watch as something fizzed, foamed, or went up in smoke. It was thrilling, chaotic, and completely normal. Instructions were vague at best and safety gear optional at most. Kids could melt plastic, set fire to paper, or accidentally discover the smell of burnt eyebrows. These were sold as educational tools, but really they were training grounds for pyromaniacs. You'd mix mystery powders just to see what color they turned, or if they'd explode. Parents watched from a distance, maybe keeping a glass of water nearby just in case. The burners themselves were tiny metal cups with open flames that danced like tiny bonfires across your kitchen table. One wrong move and suddenly your science project doubled as a fire drill. And if you didn't lose an eyebrow there, you might lose an eye to the next toy on the list, because clackers weren't just noisy, they were downright dangerous. So let us talk about telex car phones, the early kind. These were supposed to be the peak of convenience, your own private phone line inside your car. Sounds slick, right? Except using one felt like yelling into a toaster that barely heard you. The equipment alone took up half your trunk, with clunky transceivers and roof antennas that made your car look like a spy van. You would pick up the phone, wait for a signal, and then shout into the handset while everyone in traffic stared at you like you were calling from the moon. Reception? Spotty on the best of days. Dropouts were constant, and unless you were in the middle of a major city, the odds of actually getting through were slim to none. Add to that the price tag, which could run higher than the car itself, and it becomes pretty clear why Telex car phones never caught on. Not to mention, you had zero privacy. People in the next lane could hear your entire conversation. It was supposed to be the future, but it felt more like a prank. Still, if we are talking about future flops, nothing tops the brief moment in time where Hertz thought regular folks might fly to work. We have just walked through the wild freedoms of the 1980s, so tell us in the comments which one shocked you most, hit the like button if it stirred a memory, and subscribe so you never miss another trip back to the past.